He walked among us, a phantom cloaked in charm. His presence was almost magnetic, drawing people in with an allure that masked his true nature. In the bustling streets and quiet alleys, he moved like a shadow, unseen and unnoticed by those around him. Jack Unterweger, the journalist, the poet, the celebrated ex-convict. He was a man of many talents, a writer whose words captivated audiences, and a poet whose verses spoke of redemption and change. His story was one of transformation, or so it seemed, a man reborn, or so it seemed. After serving time for his crimes, he emerged from the prison gates into the sunlight, a symbol of second chances. Society welcomed him back with open arms, eager to believe in his reformation. Beneath the veneer of respectability, a monster lurked, a predator. Unterweger craved the spotlight. His eyes, though often filled with a glint of charm, hid a darkness that few could see. He stood before crowds, his smile masking the sinister thoughts that brewed within. He wrote about crime, analyzed it, dissected it for the public. His articles were detailed, his insights profound. He seemed to have an uncanny understanding of the criminal mind, a perspective that fascinated his readers. All the while, darkness festered within him. The haunted expression he wore in solitude was a stark contrast to the confident facade he presented to the world. His clenched fists were a testament to the inner turmoil he struggled to contain. He was living a lie, a terrifying double life. By day, he was the reformed writer, the man who had turned his life around. By night, he was something far more sinister, a predator hiding in plain sight. His pen, a weapon as deadly as any blade. With each stroke, he crafted narratives that deflected suspicion, stories that painted him as a man of intellect and insight. But the ink that flowed from his pen was tainted with deceit. His words, a shield to deflect suspicion. He spoke with confidence, his speeches filled with eloquence and charm. The newspapers he held up to his face were both a tool and a mask, hiding his true identity from the world. He played the role of rehabilitated soul to perfection, shaking hands, smiling warmly, receiving accolades and applause. He was the poster child for redemption, a man who had seemingly conquered his demons. The world, it seemed, wanted to believe him. Journalists flocked to him, eager to capture his story, to share his journey of transformation. The crowd's cheers and applause were a testament to the success of his facade. But the truth was far more sinister. Behind the curtain of his public persona, dark clouds gathered. The shadowy figure that lurked was not just a part of his past, but a present and dangerous reality. Jack Unterweger was a serial killer, his crimes as brutal as they were calculated. The cold, calculated look in his mugshot was a stark reminder of the monster that lay beneath the surface. His charm and intellect were merely tools he used to mask his true nature, a nature that was as dark and twisted as the crimes he committed. Austria, 1950. Jack Unterweger is born into a world of shadows, an illegitimate child, unwanted, abandoned. His early life a brutal tapestry of poverty, neglect and abuse. He drifted through childhood, a ghost in the making, in and out of trouble. Petty theft turned to violence. A rage simmered within him, waiting to explode. Then came the first taste of blood, a young prostitute, her life extinguished in a fit of fury. Unterweger was convicted, imprisoned, the sentence, life. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Prison walls could not contain Unterweger's ambition. He wrote relentlessly, plays, poems, short stories, his words, a plea for understanding, for redemption. He became the poster child for rehabilitation. Politicians, celebrities, they championed his cause. He was granted parole in 1990. A model prisoner, they called him. The media embraced him. He was invited onto talk shows, interviewed for newspapers and magazines. He wrote about crime, about the criminal mind. The irony was lost on no one. But behind the charm, the carefully constructed persona, the monster was stirring. Freedom proved intoxicating, the monster unleashed. Unterweger's killing spree began almost immediately. His victims, all women, most of them prostitutes, their bodies discarded with a chilling familiarity, strangled with their own undergarments, posed, disrespected even in death. A pattern emerged. The whispers began. Could it be? Could the celebrated writer be responsible for these heinous acts? Unterweger used his newfound fame to access his victims. He would approach them under the guise of conducting interviews. They trusted him, the journalist, the writer, the public figure. How could they not? He lured them in with promises of money, of fame. He preyed on their vulnerability, their desperation. He saw them not as human beings, but as objects, playthings for his own twisted desires. And all the while, he continued to write articles about the murders, speculating on the killer's motives, taunting the police. Whispers in the shadows. In the dead of night, when the world is asleep, the darkness comes alive with secrets and fears. The shadows hold stories untold, and the whispers carry the weight of unspeakable deeds. As the body count rose, so did the suspicion. Fear gripped the community, and every shadow seemed to hide a potential threat. The once peaceful nights were now filled with dread and uncertainty. The police began to connect the dots. Each piece of evidence, each clue, brought them closer to the truth. The detectives worked tirelessly, piecing together the puzzle that seemed almost impossible to solve. The victims, the methods. Each crime scene told a story of horror and pain. The similarities were too striking to ignore, and a pattern began to emerge. The chilling similarities to Unterweger's earlier crime. His past was a dark shadow that loomed over the present, casting doubt and fear. The community remembered his name and the terror it brought. But he was a master manipulator. His charm and confidence masked the darkness within. He knew how to play the game, how to twist the narrative to his advantage. He deflected blame, pointed fingers at others. His ability to shift suspicion was uncanny, and it kept him one step ahead of the law. He used his platform to cast doubt, to sow confusion. His words were his weapons, and he wielded them with precision. The lines between truth and lies blurred, leaving everyone questioning what they knew. The media, initially hesitant to believe the accusations, began to question their own role in his rise to fame. They had once celebrated him, but now they wondered if they had been complicit in his deception. Had they created a monster? The headlines that once praised him now seemed like a cruel joke. The journalists grappled with their conscience, questioning their responsibility in the unfolding tragedy. Had their own ambition, their desire for a captivating story, blinded them to the truth? The weight of their choices hung heavy as they realized the impact of their words and actions. The shadows whispered, and the truth slowly emerged from the darkness. The walls closed in. The net began to close. Forensic evidence linked Unterweger to the crimes. Witnesses came forward, their testimonies painting a damning picture. Still, he proclaimed his innocence. A victim of circumstance, he claimed, a scapegoat for a society that feared what it didn't understand. But the evidence was overwhelming. In 1994, a warrant was issued for his arrest. The manhunt was on. Unmasking evil. Unterweger fled. He became a fugitive, his face plastered on wanted posters across Europe. He contacted journalists, giving interviews from undisclosed locations. He taunted the police, reveling in the attention. But his time was running out. The authorities were closing in. The world was watching. The mask of respectability had finally slipped, revealing the monster beneath. He was apprehended in Miami, Florida, hiding in plain sight. The game was over. The charade was exposed. Jack Unterweger, the killer journalist, was finally unmasked. Reflections in the abyss. In the depths of human nature there lies a darkness that few dare to confront. This darkness is often masked by a facade of normalcy, a veneer of charm that hides the true malevolence within. Such was the case with Jack Unterweger, a man whose life and crimes would become a chilling testament to the duality of human nature. Unterweger's trial was a media sensation. The courtroom was packed with journalists, all eager to capture every moment of the proceedings. Cameras flashed incessantly, and reporters jostled for the best positions, each one hoping to get the scoop that would make headlines around the world. The world watched in horror as the full extent of his crimes was revealed. The details were gruesome, the acts unspeakable. People gasped in disbelief, their faces contorted in shock and horror. It was a spectacle that captivated and repulsed in equal measure. He was convicted on 11 counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison. The judge's gavel came down with a resounding thud, sealing his fate. The courtroom fell silent, the weight of justice heavy in the air. Prison bars closed behind him, a final, irrevocable end to his reign of terror. That night he committed suicide in his cell. Alone in the dim light of his prison cell, Unterweger made his final decision. A noose, a moment of despair, and it was over. His life ended as abruptly as it had spiraled into darkness. A final act of defiance. In his last moments, Unterweger chose to escape the justice that had finally caught up with him. It was a defiant gesture, a refusal to face the consequences of his actions, a refusal to take responsibility for his actions. Even in death, he shunned accountability, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and unresolved pain. His death did little to quell the questions that lingered. Why did he do it? How did he manage to deceive so many for so long? The shadows of doubt and curiosity remained, casting a pall over the aftermath of his crimes. Questions about the role of the media, the nature of evil, and the ease with which a monster can hide in plain sight. The media dissected every aspect of the case, probing into the nature of evil and the frightening reality that such darkness can exist unnoticed among us. Jack Unterweger's legacy is a chilling reminder that darkness can lurk in the most unexpected places. It serves as a stark warning that evil often wears a mask of innocence, blending seamlessly into the fabric of everyday life, and that sometimes the most charming smiles conceal the most sinister of truths. The story of Jack Unterweger is a haunting reflection in the abyss, a reminder of the duality that exists within us all.